Want to welcome everybody into Iowa Postgame. It's going to be a quiet show from me. I'm going to add Coach Gary Close to the mix. I know a lot of frustrated fans after that one, Gary.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to unravel. I want to start with this. Why did we not foul when we're up 3 in the first overtime?
Well, it's a good point. It was a little. You don't want to foul too soon because then it's not worth it. So they shot the ball pretty quickly. I think they got the shot off with 8 or 9 seconds left to go in the game. So that's a little early. What I was a little disappointed about is that in that situation, obviously you don't want to give up any threes, so you're switching everything. If they slip and go to the basket and get a 2, fine. But you can't give up any threes. And so they run that ball screen, and they got confused a little bit. And it was enough that the guy that popped was open, and then you're flying to get to him, and then you're flying around. And luckily they didn't foul him. And they leave their feet and fly by, and the guy hits the 3. So that's where I felt they fell a little short there. You just, hey, we're going to switch everything and get up on them and make them dribble around us. But to their credit, they got a pretty good look, and of course you got to make it, and he did. So that was a tough one. That was a gut punch there.
And this is I know Iowa wins this game on the road. It doesn't do much of anything for the resume besides pencil another Big Ten win, and certainly a road win is always important. But Gary, this is you use the word gut punch. This loss is a gut punch for Iowa's tournament chances. I'm not saying they're blown, but this is a tough one to lose because now you again we go to Ohio State Thursday. You're staring down the gullet of 4-7.
Yeah, yep. We're going to find out an awful lot about them come Thursday night because that's an Ohio State team that's coming off a loss that needs a win to got any chances of staying in the Big Ten race, and Iowa needs one to stay in the tournament race. So we'll find out an awful lot about this team come Thursday night because it's going to be hard to regroup and get through this loss and turn right around and get back out on the road.
So, and I know this is hypothetical and you're just speculating, Gary, and that's okay. We're going to speculate on the show, but for the record, had there been, instead of 19 seconds coming out of bounds, said there was 10 seconds, do you see Fran instructing his team to foul in that situation?
Yeah, possibly. If it's 8 or 9 seconds, that's still a lot of time. They could almost make 2 free throws and press you and try to see if they can get a turnover and then foul you because they still got time. So I think that's a little early. Now, if it's somebody that's not a very good free throw shooter, then maybe you roll the dice and you do it. You like to get that foul with 2, 3, 4 seconds left so that there's just not much time you get the rebound and get fouled and go down and shoot. There's not much time to get the ball back down the court and get a good shot off. So it was kind of in a gray area. So I really didn't see an obvious chance to go get him unless you're going to foul him with 9 or 10 seconds. And in my opinion, that's too early.
I will say this: there's lots to unpack from that. The Keegan Murray play at the end of regulation was spectacular. I mean, that's just such an impressive play, Gary. Can you speak to just the athleticism involved in making that play?
If you watch that play, which I did, he literally was outside the 3-point line when or straddling the 3-point line when that shot was taken, and got all the way to the other side of the rim to tip it in. It was an unbelievable play. And it just goes to show you how important defensive rebounding is. If that guy just gets a little bump on him, we don't even go into overtime. The game's over. Right. And he just lets him fly right by him. And to his credit, he just hunted the ball down and made an unbelievable play. And unfortunately, we didn't get rewarded for it by finishing the deal.
Iowa has been and we can talk about tournament outlook. By the way, are your birds okay? I don't hear them.
I've let them out of the cage.
Good. They can fly around the neighborhood. But no, as it relates to Iowa's tournament chances, I see some negativity here in the chat, and I understand it. It's not a good loss, and you lose it in a way that's crushing for the fans. I'm sure just as crushing for the coaches and players. But Iowa was actually, we've talked about this. People were generous, at least the experts were generous with where they projected Iowa in the tournament. I checked it a couple days ago, and I saw ESPN's Joe Lunardi had Iowa as a 7 seed, which is unbelievable to me because Iowa hasn't beaten anybody. Technically, the Indiana and Utah State wins are quad 1 wins by 2. In other words, either one of those teams fall down by 2 spots in the net, which they very well could. Those won't be quad 1 wins. But I'm just curious, Gary, do you stand? I know we talked about this earlier in the season. Do you stand by if Iowa is 9-11, they probably have to win a couple in the Big Ten tournament? Because I think that's kind of what we established several weeks ago.
Just off the top of my head, I would say yes. Now it depends on where those 9 wins come from.
Right.
If they, well, I don't know exactly who they've got left, but if they're knocking off, they're knocking off Michigan State or somebody like that, then that's going to mean a little bit more. It's going to, it's always going to take some more wins. I think 9-11 would be risky for sure.
So just for the record, for anybody that listens to the show and says I come on here and just spew negativity, which I try not to do. I told people last Thursday, in my honest opinion, that fans were overreacting to the loss to Purdue. They were overreacting to the low scoring outputs to Rutgers and Penn State. Penn State's a good defensive team. We've shown those metrics before. I will say this, Gary, this is the worst offensive team in the Big Ten by scoring, and I didn't think Iowa played good defense at all tonight. Can you speak to that?
No.
Maybe.
No, I don't think it was one of their better nights on the defensive end. They're not a very good 3-point shooting team, and they didn't shoot very well tonight from 3. They hit a couple big ones, and so you saw more zone because of it. And I can understand that. Where I didn't understand was why they were playing their man so extended and so aggressive, and just allowing them to get all those dribble drives to the basket. Penn State, you would want to play more of a compact defense and make them beat you from the outside and take away their driving lanes. And that's the one question I would have. I didn't quite understand that. You give up 90 points to that team. That's just way too much. And I was trying to say to myself as the game was going on, have they had 2 stops in a row? Have they had 3 stops in a row?
Yeah.
I don't know if they did the whole entire game.
Gary, we couldn't get clean stops in overtime. Either one of the overtimes just could not buy a clean stop.
They needed 2 or 3 stops in a row and just get a 8-point lead, and maybe Penn State would have gone away, but they just couldn't. And then when they did get stops, they couldn't get rebounds, which is part of defense. So we've talked about in the past, I think their half-court defense and rebounding costing the game. Obviously, you scored whatever they scored, 90 points or close to it. That should be enough to win. And especially against a team like Penn State that's not an offensive powerhouse, just didn't get enough clean stops, especially on the road. That's where your defense has got to carry you.
We'll get back to that subject here in a second. I want to take our first call. Thank you for calling from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Who's on the line?
Hey, Corey, it's the real MVP.
How are you, sir? Bet you're pretty happy because Kentucky did something amazing the other night in Kansas. But what do you think of the game tonight?
It was embarrassing. That's a very simple way to put it. I didn't see effort on the defensive end in any way, shape, or form. And defense is about effort. It's inexcusable what happened in overtime.
The effort comment, all I know, and this is something we can talk about too, Gary, but I think he's spot on with the effort thing at times. I'm not saying I wouldn't try to win this game. But did you see Iowa maybe once? I counted one time in overtime. I believe it was the first overtime when Iowa built a 3 or 4 point lead where Iowa was actually able to get a 50-50 ball. I mean, it seemed like John Hara basically just said, no, it didn't matter how many guys had their mitts on the ball. He said, nope, I'm taking this ball every single time. I mean, it's almost like people get mad at me for saying, well, there's not enough effort. And isn't that effort? What else do you call that? Strength?
Yeah, no, that's effort. That's, you talk about getting your nose on the ball, putting your face on the ball. That's anytime there's a ball on the loose floor, especially around the basket, you cannot let that thing come off the floor. You just can't do it. You got to get down and cover the thing up and tie it up and do whatever you can, because if it comes up, then bad things are probably going to happen, especially if it comes up into the offensive guy's hands, which that did. That was a big bucket you can't let happen. I'm sure the coaches will point that out.
Oh yeah, there needs to be there's going to be a lot pointed out. Keegan Murray, I think he is. I think that's the right Murray. He had 0 points and 0 rebounds in the first half. I mean, that's unexcusable.
Well, he didn't play. Once again, he got 2 fouls early, and Fran stands by his 2 foul rule. So he didn't play. You can't score if you don't play. I mean, he gets too handsy, right? I mean, he goes for a lot of shot blocks. He sticks his hands places, Gary. That's going to be a problem, especially with Fran's. It's not a really good mix when you're so reliant on one guy to put up points, which they are. Right. And then you have a situation where your coach refuses to play somebody, right or wrong, refuses to play in the rest of the half if you pick up 2 fouls. That's kind of a bad combination, is it not? Especially on the road.
Yeah, I tell you, as I've watched it more, I can understand why he sits him down because, like you said, he gets some bad fouls, and he just can't afford to get him 3 fouls in the first half. He's just got to get better at that. And it does affect you. You're not as aggressive. You're worried about fouling. It affects your game. And that's happened, 2 or 3 times now. He's just got to be smarter and play more with his body and his feet and less with his hands and stay down and, be careful picking the spots where he wants to leave his feet and try to block shots. Because I know when we played shot blockers, we just licked our chops. We're just going to pump fake him and get him up in the air, and we'll get him in foul trouble and get him out of the game. And so he's got to get better at that. They can't afford to have him in foul trouble. It's just and he has not shown enough discipline that he could play with 2 fouls and not pick. He picked up his 3rd right in the beginning of the second half, right off the bat on a reach in. So I can see why coach is taking him out because he doesn't have confidence that he won't make a dumb foul and get 3.
For the record, though, Gary, Fran does it with everybody, not just Keegan.
Yeah, no, I understand. But I think with somebody like Keegan, he have think about keeping him in because he needs him so badly. But he can't afford to, to have him get fouled out or get 3 fouls in the first half. So. As we talked about the other day, when kids know that, then you like to think they're going to get more discipline and not get dumb fouls. You don't mind some fouls. He gets a foul going over the back or somebody makes a great move and gets a charge on him. But, reaching and grabbing and hacking fouls are just dumb fouls and can cost you the game. I don't think there's any question if he didn't get in foul trouble in the first half and he probably gets a few buckets and it's a different outcome.
Well, yeah, I was going to go with that point. I kind of agree that maybe the 2 foul rule shouldn't be all the time, but this is his 3rd or 4th time committing 2 fouls almost within the first 8 minutes or so. I mean, it's his fault at this point. If it was once in this game, I can understand where Corey's coming from, but the types of fouls he's committing and stuff like that, it's a lack of situational awareness.
Yeah, I think he'd be the first to admit it. I think he'd be, sometimes you get a little over aggressive and a little handsy, and it's discipline. It's it's easier said than done. There's a lot of teams. Penn State had a lot of dumb fouls, some unbelievably dumb fouls. The one right at the end of the game where the guy kind of whacked somebody right over the head with like a minute to go, I think in the second overtime, was just an unbelievably stupid foul. It's why undisciplined teams get beat. And part of being disciplined is not fouling. Because those fouls are not only getting him in foul trouble, but they're getting the team closer to the penalty. And now when you get a legit foul, they're shooting rather than not. And Iowa's usually pretty good at that, of not having a lot of dumb fouls, but he's just got to get better at it. They need him on the court.
And one of the things, Coach Close, I was going to ask you about is at the end of regulation to go overtime. I hate it when people go hero ball mode and just do one-on-one and hit a 3-pointer to try to win it at the buzzer. What are your thoughts about that versus running the set play?
Yeah, I think it's just kind of you got to know your team and what you feel works. The other night Wisconsin gave the ball to Davis and he made a terrific play and went one-on-one and scored and won the game. So I think you'll have examples of both that work. I think it's where you got to understand your team, understand your players, and then try to come up with the best option, to get the best shot you could get. And that's not an easy decision to make.
And what does this mean in terms of Iowa's chances for the tournament? Because I'm seeing people saying they're done, it's over. I'm not going that far. This will hurt them when it comes to selection Sunday, though, but I still think they're in.
I don't know how much it hurts you, Gary, because I think losing to any Big Ten team on the road is probably not considered by the committee to be a bad loss, but you've got to take advantage of these games against the lower tier teams, and it's a missed opportunity in that regard, correct?
Yeah, just picking up wins. You're just trying to pick up as many wins as you get to build your resume, and that's with some of the teams they got coming down the road. This is one that they wanted to get and had a real good chance of getting it. So it's not done by any means. It makes the path a little bit more difficult. That's why I think it's going to be interesting to see how they respond come Thursday night against a really good team on the road. But I've always liked the makeup of this team. So I would be shocked if they're not ready to go on Thursday night and give a great effort. They've done that pretty much the entire year. There's some execution tonight that I think they'd like to get back, but in terms of being ready to play and things like that, I think for the most part they've done a pretty good job of that, and have done a good job responding from losses.
And Corey, I got to ask you about your rankings you released a few hours ago. Really, man?
Do we have to?
Corey, come on, man. You're toying with me now.
You're an SEC. Listen, you're an SEC. You're an SEC
actual video.
You're an SEC fan. I understand you're upset, but you're an SEC fan, and your conference is not as strong as the Big 12. That's all there is to it. It's not as honestly. If Auburn hadn't, I'm assuming you're upset because I didn't rank Auburn number 1. Am I correct in saying that?
That's one of the few reasons. But we won the Big 12 SEC challenge.
That doesn't mean anything. What does that have to do with anything? They're all about matchups, don't we? I mean, the ACC right now is The ACC is struggling mightily, and I believe, if I recall, the Big Ten ACC Challenge was neck and neck. I think it was one game difference. Look, maybe Auburn will. I'm just saying, Missouri's not good. Auburn beat them by 1. I know they beat Oklahoma. But we'll see. Gonzaga's just dominating teams right now. They're beating teams by 35 points every night. They just put up 104 to Portland State the other night. So
yeah, but that's Portland State.
I understand, but that's what you have to do to make. That's what you have to do to make up for a weak conference schedule. You have to dominate. And right now, Houston's not dominating in their conference. They're winning, but they're not dominating. And Auburn's winning, but you can't beat one of the worst teams in your league by 1 and expect me to put you to number 1 just because you beat a mediocre Oklahoma team that Utah State also beat. So anyways.
Yeah, I get that. But Corey, let me put it this way. Auburn has been a team that Gonzaga and Baylor has lost to. So that's, it's hard to find common opponents against these teams. So I would say that's a pretty good indication that one team might be better.
It's right. It's one factor. Common opponent is one factor. It's a small factor.
The other reason why you should put Auburn number 1, Corey, is coached by a former Hawkeye.
Yeah, I know. And he just signed a huge extension, right? It sounds like he's going to be there for the rest of his career. So no, I respect your stance on it. And I did drill MVP. I considered it. Like I say, they were 1 point away from losing. I know they didn't, but that's a factor if you're looking at polls. And then who cares? They're all number 1. Those are right now. Auburn's a number 1 seed. Gonzaga's a number 1 seed. But I do appreciate you getting upset about my poll drill MVP. That means I'm doing something right.
Yeah. Oh, listen, man. I'm not upset. I was shocked and surprised. I don't get upset over polls because in basketball, unless you change the seeding line, it really doesn't matter that much.
Yeah.
But I was like, part of me thought you did it just to mess with me a bit.
I did give you some. Honestly. I did think about it. I thought, drill MVP is going to call us. He's going to call our show tonight. So I'm glad you fulfilled that. You're into the bargain.
Oh yeah, I got to provide some content for the channel, man.
Absolutely.
That's how we get you over 1,000 subscribers, and you can do that by hitting the the subscribe buttons. If it's red, please hit that button.
Attaboy. You got it. All right, man. I'm going to let you go because I see we got a couple of people try to call in, but we always enjoy your calls, sir.
Yeah, no problem. Good luck the rest of the way.
All right, man. Talk to you later. Thank you so much. And Gary, I'm sorry for that segue, but who's the best team in the country in your opinion right now? Is it Gonzaga? Is it Auburn?
Auburn. I'd say Auburn.
Yeah, and for the record, my poll is not who I think is the best team. It's based off of what I look at as it relates to resume. And yes, I get it. Alabama beat Zaga. They beat Baylor, and Auburn beat Alabama. I understand that. Common opponent's one factor. I digress. Thank you for calling from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Who's on the line?
Lomansky, Corey.
Well, you don't sound like you're in tears, Lomansky.
No, I'm not. I'm actually going to mimic Coach's comments about he likes the makeup of the team, and I'm going to start out someplace different than I expected to. It's quite obvious to me that the real MVP needs to understand who Bruce Pearl is, and there's many coaches in the Big Ten with the talent of Bruce Pearl, and I'm really looking forward to the tournament because the SEC's got to go against Purdue and Illinois and Michigan State, and the call-in program as we head to the tournament's going to really heat up because I got your back, Corey. I got it big time.
I appreciate that. Hey, I'll say this. Lomansky, you got to admit the Big Ten did not show up to the tournament last year. So if you want...
Oh, absolutely. Well, one and done, There's a lot of... Think about Duke and North Carolina. There's a lot of one and dones, but let's look at everything from a whole, not just hit and miss and specifics. And I guess most Iowa fans are down because they're going to look at scoring in the first half and this and that. But let's take a step back and look at how we could win the game as a whole. And I guess I'm going to point out and try to go through this quick as possible because Coach probably has a lot to say. We don't give enough time, but Penn State's a very experienced team. Bobby Hansen, Dahl point out there's 7 new players. They're the 6th oldest team in the college basketball. Don't underrate Penn State as far as they can't beat most teams in the Big Ten. Then I'm going to quickly go how we could win this game. And the thing I'm probably most frustrated with, I wrote it down. I actually got a yellow pad out because I was worried about this game after watching Nebraska and Rutgers, and Nebraska had that game and gave it away. I kind of root for Hoiberg and his challenges this year. But if you look at the clock, we had 14 fouls at 13 minutes and 46 seconds left in the second half. And the halftime score was 34-32. Then the clock went down to 3:56 before the 7th foul. How did we do so well in the first overtime? We got to the free throw line and we went inside. Here's a fact that people got to understand. I think last time Coach and Corey, we talked about identity of this team. If you look at the season rebounding averages of 3 players for Iowa, Keegan, I think, did not lead the team in rebounding like you pointed out correctly, Corey. But as of yesterday, before this game, Keegan was average 8.4 rebounds. Chris was at 6. Phillips was 4.5. And the 2 aggressive people throughout the game, if you look, Keegan picked up fouls. Chris had, I wrote it down here, Chris picked up like the second most fouls. And then you have Phillip with 3. And that, to me, is a sign of aggressiveness. And if you look at the aggressive play of getting a ball, loose ball, where is the aggressiveness from the rest of the team? We've got too few people hauling the mail. And when you put rebounding, like got us into overtime, was Keegan. When you put that pressure on him to get defensive boards and score, I mean, that's a hell of a lot to put on one player. And I guess when you look compared to Luka Garza, we're a totally different team than last year.
Luka Garza had weapons everywhere else. I mean, he just had offensive weapons everywhere around him. I mean, he didn't have much defense around him. That team could not stop anybody. This team struggles at times to stop people. We've seen this team play better defense, but Lomansky, that team had weapons everywhere. This team, their only 3-point threat is Jordan Bohannon, who can't create off the dribble.
And you threw this question at me, Corey, earlier. You asked me if we had enough outside shooting on this team, and I said it's to be determined. And I guess I'm kind of slipping to like, we've got to know how to play our kind of ball. And I guess we've got to have some kind of more physical presence. I'm not happy that when you've got, we need to get to the free throw line more during the game. It pulled us back in the first overtime. And that means people outside the three that picked up fouls, they have to get on it. They have to play a type of ball that's more aggressive. And our first overtime was an advantage of inside plays. Phillip had one inside. Keegan had a couple inside. And I think the second overtime, the wheels fell off. But I'll shut up and get your guys' input. But I'm still like the makeup of this team. They just got to understand who they are. And knowing McCaffrey's temperament, those boys are going to get work now because he's smarter than me by far, and he knows what they got to work on to get better. And we're going to find out. We're going to find out how these personalities, each and every one, reacts to adversity. And I kind of like Eula saying, to hell with it. I'll step forward and take a risk. And so many players in the first half just had a snow cone and decided that we don't have to play at 110%. And I'll shut up and listen for feedback.
What are your thoughts, Gary?
I thought there were some good points. I think the bottom line is, despite some of their struggles offensively, they lost the game on the defensive end. They scored enough to win. They just couldn't get, as we talked about, they just couldn't get 2, 3, 4 stops in a row and build a sizable lead or finish a game off. And in some cases, it was not getting a defensive rebound. They gave up 90 points. That's a lot of points, especially on the road. You're having a hard time winning on the road, giving up 90, even if it is a double overtime game. So that's where I would look. Their offense has been a work in progress. It's at times it's been really good. Other times it's struggled a little bit, but that's understandable. That's with a lot of new guys. That's probably going to be the case. And that's where your defense has got to sustain you. And we had talked about they had made some progress, and I think they had. Tonight wasn't good enough to get a win on the road, and I think that's where you got to look. It just not enough stops to seal the deal.
So Gary, if you're talking about defense and defensive rebounding is part of that,
yeah,
who has to step up? Who has to step up defensively in the half-court defense or on the defensive boards? Who's got the talent, or who do you if you were coaching, if you were the head coach, who are you going to point at and say, somebody's got to help the Keegan brothers and Phillip on the defensive end?
Yeah, I think the biggest area where they're inconsistent, and I think they are getting better at it, but they're still not there. And I think everybody admit it. They give up way too much dribble penetration. And when you give up dribble penetration, it's breaking your defense down. It can result in kickouts for wide open threes. It can result in allowing people to get to the basket for easy shots around the rim. It can cause you to foul. It can cause you to not get the defensive rebound because people have to rotate, and that leaves guys open on the weak side to slide in and get rebounds. So they've got to keep the ball out of the paint and give up more jump shots rather than shots right around the basket that break your defense down. And then I think the second thing, rebounding, and you saw it a few times, they've just got to get a little more physical with their bodies. They've got to find bodies and lay wood on people and let them know that, hey, if you're going to come in tonight and rebound, you're going to have to go through me. And that's 1 through 5. That's not just the big guys. Guards got to do the same thing. They got to find a guy and get them on their back and check out and keep them off the glass. So, but you'll see it. You can watch. It happens all the time. You see somebody give up dribble penetration. A guy slides over and tries to block the shot. The shot is missed, and that guy's man who he left to block the shot gets the offensive rebound and puts it in. I mean, it happens a ton. That's why I'm not a huge believer in block shots. I think in a lot of cases the defense, it hurts you because of all the ones you miss or the ones that teams draw fouls on. I'd rather just play solid and make them shoot over you, and then just pick your spots for blocking shots. I think shot blockers have a tendency to jump around and get in foul trouble and not use their body as much, and that's where you can give up offensive rebounds. And so I think it's the hardest thing to teach defensively is to keep the ball in front of you. It's difficult. Trust me, it is not easy, and it takes a lot of work. And so the more extended you are, then there's less. It's like I always use this analogy, and it's kind of funny. If you're driving along and you're speeding, and you see a cop, what do?
Slow down.
You jam on your brakes. Exactly. So if I'm going to get the ball and I'm going to drive it to the hoop, and I go to drive, and in this case, I see 5 black shirts in front of me or near me, I'm not going to be as anxious to put the ball on the floor as if I look and I see just big wide open gaps with nobody around. Oh man, I'm going. And I think, and that's why their zone is, I think at times has been effective, is because now they do have bodies in the paint that are, I'm not going to say clogging, but being some kind of a defensive presence. And I just think they're too extended. It'd be one thing if they were extended and they were turning people over or driving people out of their offense. They're not doing that. They're still getting beat off the dribble and not getting a ton of turnovers. And so that's one thing I think they got to take a look at is playing. I'm not saying a softer defense, but playing defense with more help and more. You can put pressure on the ball, but you got to contain the ball. The ball's valuable, and if the ball's being driven to the basket, your defense is in trouble.
Anything else, Lemansky?
I'll end with this, gentlemen. I think one of the things I've got to give a shout out to Connor McCaffrey's toughness. He's kind of our Davison at Iowa. He doesn't like to lose. He's a tough nut. When things are just adversity shows up, you don't want to have Connor McCaffrey playing against you. And I think Chris Murray, as he learns from his teammates, will step forward the rest of the year and get his hands on the ball more and show that Connor McCaffreyism. And I think we got that to look forward to, and that'll be a real key to success going forward. And I'll end the night with that, gentlemen.
All right. Appreciate it, sir. Appreciate the call.
He had a terrific game tonight. He had some big shots and tied people up, and there's no question. He brings it. He's there have been nights where he hasn't been very effective, but you could tell why they play him. He's important. From some of the comments that the caller made there, and tonight, of course, was a bonus with him making some shots, and he was terrific tonight.
Status is in jeopardy. I mean, we don't know what aren't. I don't know. Yep. Yeah. Any idea what was going on with the arm? Could you? I don't even know what it could have been.
Yeah, I thought originally it might be his shoulder, maybe popped out, but then they said it was his arm, and then the ice looked like it was on his shoulder. So that would be my guess, but I don't know.
All right, Lemansky, appreciate the call as always, sir.
And just remember, Chris has had very few minutes last year, and he's a sophomore.
Yep.
So he's going to keep on coming. Good night, gentlemen.
All right, sir. Appreciate it. He's right. Yeah. I mean, I thought Chris Murray really struggled tonight, Gary. Really struggled.
Yep. He had definitely had his moments, but you can almost expect that with guys that young. There are going to be some nights where it's more of a struggle than not.
Okay, so there's questions in the chat here for you, Coach. I don't want to miss these. So I'll just one of the overarching themes that I'm seeing here from fans, and we haven't had it in our 2 calls, but in the chats for sure, people are very frustrated and that's a kind way of putting it, with the play of Jordan Bohannon. And we've discussed that at length. But like tonight, even when Jordan was open, he couldn't hit shots. I was honestly surprised, and I get it. He's been the most clutch 3-point shooter in Iowa history, and although you may disagree with that, Gary, because you had some pretty good ones in your day. But I guess my point is, were you surprised, first of all, that Iowa went to Jordan? There's no play. What are we just running he's supposed to beat his guy off the dribble and make a 3? I mean, we're very fortunate Keegan Murray got his long arms around that. I don't understand the play at the end of the first at the end of regulation or at the end of the first overtime. I don't understand what the play was. Yeah,
I'm not sure either. I think it just broke down and they had to make something happen, and it didn't develop. He's a proven player. I mean, he has done it. He's been there before. Who are you going to play instead of him? Especially in terms of outside shooting.
Well, he's not making them, Gary. That's what
yeah,
people
know,
say.
But you got to hope. You got to hope he does. If he doesn't make him, then they're in trouble. I mean, you got to hope that it's going to happen because he's done it before. Now, if he had never done it before, then you got a problem. But he has, and he's made some huge shots. We talked about it's going to be a lot more difficult this year with the guys he's playing with. It's easier to guard him now because the defense doesn't have to guard some other guys on the court. That's just the way it is. And I thought he missed a couple that were open, then a couple that were contested, that were tough shots. That he has made them in the past, but I think he's a proven player that you got to hope is going to shoot himself out of it, and because they need it. And if he doesn't, then they are in trouble. They need him to make some baskets, and I think his track record is such that I think it's prudent to roll the dice in hopes that he will.
Here's what it's not proven, though, Gary. He's not proven to be able to do this without, we talked about it, other weapons behind the arc. And he doesn't have he doesn't have any consistent threats back there. Patrick makes him at times. Chris makes him at times. Peyton Sandfort comes in at times and makes a three or two. But that would be, I'm just playing devil's advocate. I'm not saying I agree with not playing him, but I'm just saying the fans that are frustrated say, well, these circumstances are different than he's ever had. And he's just not offering. He's not offering anything defensively. And he's not making threes like we need him to make threes. So, I don't think any of the other guards are playing at a level that is so
way different than Jordan that it would warrant it right now. If somebody were, I think they probably would take a look. And they're taking him out when they can defensively. They're making those switches, and I think he's doing as much as he can. But he needs some offense from him, and I wouldn't be surprised. I know the Bohannon's well. It will not shock me if he shoots himself out of it, out of this slump. I think they all go through it, and at least that's what I'm hoping. And I think that's probably what the staff is too, that he's done it before, and we got to hope he can do it again.
And I promise I'm not trying to downplay the significance of not having Bohannon make threes. To anybody wondering, but again, to put this in perspective, we've talked about it, but last year he had Frederick. He has Garza, who made threes. Garza would maybe be the second best three-point shooter on this year's team if he was here, Gary. Is that fair?
There's an inside threat too. So you're digging down there trying to help out there, and it's kind of like playing Purdue now. They got an inside scorer, and they got a couple of shooters on the perimeter. You got a guy who can drive, and it's you got to pick your poison. With the Iowa team now, you can play off people. And you don't have to play off of Jordan to help. You can just be right on them like glue. And that's what they're doing. And they're chasing him and getting over screens. And he's not getting a lot of clean looks. He's getting some. But, when you're rushing some of the shots and all of a sudden you get a wide open shot, it's just a little bit different. It's not in rhythm. And hopefully we can get that back. Because they need it, and he's done it before. So that's what I'm banking on. I'm hoping he's going to shoot himself out of it.
Yeah, so again, Wieskamp, Garza, Isaiah Moss was a threat with Jordan to
Frederick,
hit
Nunji.
Frederick. Yeah, and we mentioned his freshman year, Peter Jock, one of the best three-point shooters in the history of Iowa basketball. And you brought it up, Gary. They have nobody inside right now that they can just dump it down to. I mean, they don't have anybody. Philip Rebraches, I think he's a hard worker, although I thought he got manhandled tonight by Hara. But it's just is what it is when Jordan has limitations. So, yeah, I think the point you're making, Gary, is would you rather bank on a guy like Tony Perkins to all of a sudden find his offensive game, or would you like to bank on a guy like Jordan Bohannon to snap out of a funk and find a way? And I understand that perspective, and certainly Tony gives you more defensively. But this team needs to score points right now. But the bottom line is we both are in agreement. The defense was not good tonight. I don't care if they scored 90 in 2 overtimes. I just, by the eye test, Gary, and I'm sure they'll drop in Ken Palm efficiency ratings, they just weren't nearly as good. You and I both agreed a week ago when they played Penn State that may have been their best defensive performance of the year.
Yeah.
And that's why I don't understand how you follow it up with this. I don't get that. The same team a week later, and it just doesn't make sense to me.
I thought they got a little too extended. I think that was a problem that broke their defense down a little quicker and a little more consistently. That hurt them, hurt the quality of the shots that Penn State got, and I'm sure they gave up 14, 15 offensive rebounds, which I guess is a ton in a double overtime game. But they got some crucial offensive rebounds that really hurt. But hey, you get one stop at the end of the first overtime, you win the game, and they couldn't do it. And that's the mentality you got to have. Okay, guys, this is it. We get this stop right here. We're we may not have played great, but we got ourselves a win. We just got to get a stop right here. And the play broke down almost right from the beginning. And now you're scrambling. And when you get in a scramble mode, you can give up open looks. And it was a decent look. And fortunately, the kid made it.
And I'm going to harp on this for 30 seconds longer because I do want to get to a couple of these comments. Dan says, why does Fran play Jordan so much? Can't score or defend. Tired of Fran's bad lineups. Hawkeye Skip says, give me Caitlin for men's team. Trade Bohannon straight up. Robert says, Bohannon can't shoot anymore. Where is Caitlin Clark when you need her? So I understand the frustrations from our fans. Let's get to our next call. Thank you for calling from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Our post game with Coach Gary Close. Who's on the line?
Hi, my name's Joe. I had a quick question for you and Coach. In overtime, why do you think Fran didn't play Joe Toussaint once? Like I understand Ulysses' defense is good and all, and he provided good free throws and things like that. But I feel like Joe Toussaint would have fed the post better with Keegan Murray, and just all around would have moved the ball better. And the offense was just stagnant. Kind of wanted your thoughts on that and why you wouldn't play him.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think he felt that he was playing pretty well, and I think he was. I think he kind of went with that he thought the guy that was playing well. He was knocking down free throws, and it looked like it could come down to free throw shooting, and he did a good job there. And he is a solid defender. He's a little bit bigger, so I think that's probably the reason that he probably just felt that Aaron was playing the best. Let's face it, the guards did not play well up until Aaron played pretty decent in the overtime. Up until the overtime, I think they were 2 for 19, all of them combined. So it wasn't like anybody was lighting it up. And I think Aaron had some good possessions late in the game and in the overtime, and I think that's the reason why he went with him.
And that is what Martin asked the same question in the chat. Do you agree? Fran sits JT too much in second half. Ulyss gives you no offense, and we need some offensive production from point guard. Here's the fact, though, Gary. They're not getting offensive production from either guy. No. So I understand what you're saying. Now, I would say if you're comparing, you're looking at the lesser of two evils. I think Toussaint's maybe a slightly better threat offensively simply because he's quicker, can get to the basket, and he can sometimes make mid-range shots. Ulyss just seems scared to shoot threes and do anything from outside, 5 feet. So yeah, I understand your question, caller. I would just say he was, he crashed the glass in overtime. He was making all his free throws. So I think you have a hard time taking a guy out who's giving you all your points.
And he got some good looks that he didn't make. But I think if you look at the numbers, I think Joe was 0 for 4 and had 2 assists and 1 turnover, and Ulyss was 0 for 7. But he did have 5 rebounds, and he had 5 assists and no turnovers, and he knocked his free throws down. So there's not a huge discrepancy. I mean, it's the hard part of coaching. But I think he probably felt he was playing a little bit better. It wasn't like it was obviously better, but it did give him a little bit of a spark, and I think that's probably the reason why he went with him.
Yeah, I was gonna say as far as moving the ball around and penetrating and stuff, I guess you could have gone both ways for sure with the free throws. Those were real helpful, but I feel like you would have been able to feed Keegan a little better. Obviously, we'll never know, but it's just frustrating they didn't get to Keegan as much. I feel like in the overtime they should have, late game, whatnot, just driving overtime, last couple seconds instead of taking those pull-up shots. I think they should have drove, but Obviously, it's easy to say that from the TV, but I just
think
wanted your opinion on that.
Yeah, and let me just say this for the record, my opinion on this. I think it's ridiculous that the potential Wooden Award winner, Keegan Murray, a lottery pick, Keegan Murray, didn't get the ball in the final possession either of the chances there at the end of regulation into the first overtime. Now, he tipped the ball in. I get that at the end of regulation, but the first one was Bohannon on a broken play, it appeared. And I believe the second one was at Patrick. It was Chris. It's just Keegan's got to be there to take that shot, Gary, in my mind.
Yeah, I think
I wish
they
he would have
missed him in the
at least
one.
give him a shot down low.
Yeah, I think there's some truth to that. I think he's got to get better at presenting himself and demanding the ball. The one play they ran a ball screen play and rolled him into the post. And if I was the passer, I'm not sure I'm going to throw it in there because it didn't look like he was just that wanted it. Now you throw it in there and turn it over, and at least you want to get a shot off. So he's still young in a lot of respects. And I think one of the areas he's got to get better at is sealing, getting angles on people in the post, demanding the ball a little bit more, things like that he can get better at, so that a post passer feels comfortable that if he throws it in there, it's going to get in there and not get turned over. And because, you don't want to turn the thing over. And as I catch the ball and I look to throw it in the post, I want to see somebody that's open and wants it and hands are ready, or I'm not going to throw it in there for fear that I might turn the ball over and we don't even get a shot off. So, I think some of it's guys doing a little better job of finding it, and some of it's he's got to work a little harder without the ball and get better at sealing and getting angles and learn how to play with his back to the basket, which is not, that's work. I mean, that takes a long time to develop. And when he's already shown great progress in that area. And if he continues to do that, he can be a lethal scorer, because they need him to score more inside and get to the free throw line. And because he's probably their most consistent inside scorer and guy that can draw fouls.
Yeah. And one other thing, I won't keep you on the line long. I was curious, just all year, mostly like second half, it was like 8-minute mark, maybe 9-minute mark. Fran brings in Ulis and Perkins, and I understand the defense and all, but I feel like if they would have at least played one of them, I don't think they should play both of them at the same time. Late game situations like that, Fran keeps them in for 5 minutes or so. Just wasn't really clicking. It never is clicking. I just don't know why they don't really alternate. I get it's for the defense, but both of them at the same time, late game, I feel like you should have one on the bench and one playing. I didn't know your thoughts.
It's a good point. I think it's it's a young team that he doesn't have a whole lot of guarantees. I know this guy can do this and that. He's hunting. He's hunting for somebody to break out. He's hunting for somebody to get hot. He's hunting for somebody to make some terrific plays. He just doesn't, other than Keegan, he really doesn't have anybody else that's proven that they can do it consistently to where he can say, hey, I gotta keep him in there 35 minutes. And they're inconsistent because they're young. And when you talk about Ulis and you talk about the other guards, with the exception of Jordan, they haven't played a ton. And so they're finding their way, and none of them have just jumped out at you that, hey, man, they got to play. I mean, they're doing too many good things. They've got to play. They all have had their moments, but nothing to the point where it makes the coaching job a lot easier, saying, hey, last year there wasn't a whole lot of decisions made. He knew exactly who he was playing and how much, and knew the rotation. And because he had a proven player in Wieskamp, he had a proven player in Frederick, he had a proven player in Garcia. I mean, he just had proven players all through his lineup. Now he's got a lot of unproven players. And that's why I think he's done a terrific job. This is not an experienced team by any stretch. In a very competitive league. So you just got to find the pieces and get enough good plays to keep winning. And for the most part, they've done that.
Yeah, I was going to agree. I think he's done a really good job. I saw the comments of saying fire Fran, whatever, after 12 seasons. But in my opinion, he took over from John Licklider, who was god awful and had to like bring us back up a little for like 3-4 years. And I mean, it's kept us steady ever since, and just needs to turn the corner. But I don't think we need to fire him at all. That's for football. That's a different discussion. Like definitely, Kirk needs to be talked about. Maybe Brian more than Fran, but I think Fran's still good in my opinion, and compared to what we were with John Licklider, which was garbage. And
Todd
Licklider. I don't agree with those comments, and the recruits and stuff he's brought in. So I think Fran's done a good job. But that was my opinion. But that's the last thing I have to say. I just watched the show a lot. I think it's a good show, and have a good rest of your night.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate the call as always. And I agree that no, you're not firing Fran. He's done a good job with this squad. It's just it's unfortunate, and you can blame Fran for this. You can blame Fran for not going to the portal harder, perhaps, in response to losing Nunji and in response to losing Frederick. I think that's a fair complaint. Here's what I do know. I know there were reports circulating after Frederick left. And of course, the circumstances, I know you're probably familiar with Frederick leaving. We've had discussions about that off the record, just him kind of doing Iowa dirty, I think, a little bit. But my understanding from the reports that have circulated is that Iowa did have a really good three-point shooter that was very interested in coming here this year. And Fran kind of turned him down because CJ Frederick was expected to be back, as he had talked with Frederick, and Frederick had said, yes, I'm coming back. And then he said, see you later when he got back from break. So that's my understanding of the situation. And that's just hearsay. But I'm just saying Fran deserves some credit here. The defense, though, this team has the athleticism, Gary. Again, I say it every year. People who say, Iowa can't defend because they don't have athletic enough guys. I'm no offense to Wisconsin Badgers. I know you went to Final Fours with Wisconsin. Y'all were never that athletic, Gary. I'm sorry. You just never that athletic, but you guys worked your tails off. You played sound, disciplined defense. Don't tell me that you can't play defense unless you have these stellar athletes. That's not how that works, okay? You defend with good coaching, right, and discipline. Am I wrong?
Yeah, no, there's no question. You can get things done in a lot of different ways. You got to coach to your strengths and what you feel comfortable coaching, and to your players and what they're capable of doing, and things like that. But no, a lot of it's effort. Defense is a lot more team-oriented than you would think. When you've got a really good defensive team, it's 5 guys working together, a lot like you do on the offensive end. And when you have 2 or 3 guys breaking down or in the wrong position, then your defense is going to suffer. And, that's just the way it is. And so it's tough. I mean, like we talked about, it's tough staying in front of guys with the ball. I mean, it's hard work. It's learning angles. It's moving your body. It's not easy. It's that's why a lot of people can't do it well, because it isn't easy. So when you can, and that's why you need the 4 other guys to be ready to help you out in case you do get beat. And when you don't have anybody, and so you're confident when you're on the ball that, hey, if I do get beat, I got 4 guys behind me that got my back. If you don't have that, then you're a little more hesitant as to what you can do on the defensive end. And, so it takes a long time to develop a good defensive team. I don't know if there's a good defensive team yet in the Big Ten that I could even point out. I don't watch it as much, but I think they're all a work in progress, and maybe some have shown moments of being really good. But I think you'd ask every Big Ten coach, they'll probably tell you, no, we're not there yet. We got to keep improving. In a lot of cases, your defense has got a farther way to go than even your offense.
And I'm sorry if I got a little passionate there, but that's the one I'm going to defend Fran about. I mean, he doesn't deserve to be fired, but I am going to criticize Fran because this defense still needs to be better. And that's why I wasn't buying in last week after they had 2 straight performances of holding teams under 52. Not going to buy into that when you're playing the 2 worst teams in the conference offensively. This was just not good tonight. Robert does ask the question, what's with the big center? Why doesn't he get in? I know we've talked about that on past shows, Gary, but he's obviously not ready. I don't know how else. I'm not there at practice, and neither are you.
No, and that's a good point, because they are. They're the coaches there every year or every practice to watch what he's doing. How hard is he working? How much progress he's making? And it's not fair to the kid to throw somebody in there that's just not ready to go. I mean, you can give him shots here and there and just see how he reacts. But even when they've done that, it hasn't been anything that's jumped out at you. And I'll be honest with you, I think Philip has shown some progress. I think he has gotten better from the beginning of the year, and I think that's what they're banking on. And hopefully, he'll continue to improve and get to a point where he can be even more effective. He had some good moments tonight with some scores around the basket, and he wasn't perfect, but I don't even think it's close with those other big guys in him and Chris Murray. I don't even think it's close. So no. I don't think you're going to see him. We're running out of time now. We got to go with the guys you think are going to get you there and are going to improve rather than constantly experimenting. You're going to experiment right till the end of the year. They'd probably rather give the minutes to Philip in hopes that he's going to progress more than they think some of those other guys that are on the bench right now will.
I want to give everybody an update here, Gary. Number 21, Iowa. Of course, we're talking about the Iowa women leading number 23, Ohio State, 85-82 with about 4 to play in the game in Carver. So Caitlin Clark, I don't know how many points she's got. She had, 15 in the first quarter, something ridiculous. So she hit a long three as I glanced over. So
I think I'll take off and go watch the end of that game.
I don't blame people. We had somebody on here, right? All thumbs. He said, I got to go watch someone win. So he went off to watch the women. And we do appreciate you sticking around here a little bit longer tonight, Gary. I've got a couple more questions I want to get to. Charles says, question for Coach Close. We know Fran's style is up-tempo and transition offense. Why do we not see more half-court isolation plays in offense for Keegan or two-man game with Keegan and Chris?
That's a good question. I don't know how many set plays they've got that that are running that we may not notice. I know he's a big believer in the motion game, which is a hard offense to scout because it's not something that's set that you know what's coming. And so I think it's more knowing your players and figuring out what's bet. I think for the most part the offense has not cost them wins. I think it's been more on the other end. They're a terrific running team. He deserves a lot of credit for that. And they do it without turning the ball over. He deserves a lot of credit for that. But if you look at any team, the hardest part is executing in the half court and getting good shots, especially in this league where the defenses are pretty good and they do a pretty good job of stopping your transition game. And it comes down to execution and cutting hard and screening well. And you can have the greatest play in the world, but if it's not executed well, it doesn't matter. Can you cut? Can you set your man up? Can you set a good screen? Can you use the screen? Well, when you have young players, they're not as good at that as maybe CJ Frederick is using a screen or Wieskamp is using a screen. And maybe the screens that Garza set were better. Just those are the kind of things that they're constantly trying to improve, and it isn't going to happen overnight. I think for the most part, their offense has been pretty good. Not all the time, but it's the defensive end that they got to continue to get better at. They've been very competitive. Obviously we'd love to have won this game. But it certainly was a competitive game. They've been competitive all year, and I'm anxious to see Thursday night. I think that's going to be a real telling tale of the quality of this team, because that's a good team they're playing that needs a win bad, and also coming off a loss. So they're really going to have to tighten those strings up tight, because it's going to be a war.
And Zed Key is going to challenge them inside, as is EJ Liddell. And they've, of course, got three-point shooters, Arns being one that they can kick it out to. So defensively, Ohio State's a team that scored a lot of points on Iowa. They scored a lot of points on Iowa last year in Iowa City. Defensively, they're going to really be tested. Now, Cooper asked the question, did Joe T foul out? He did not. He had 2 personal fouls. Fran just sat him. We talked about that already.
And we don't know what happened. Maybe he was sick. Maybe he got nicked up in practice. Whatever, or maybe he just thought that the kid was playing better. So sometimes you don't know exactly what's going on if you don't know all the information. But I thought Ulis played pretty well. I thought he gave him some moments. And I thought he got some good shots that he would love to have back. He made some pretty good plays and got some good looks that he just didn't make.
And the only game, by the way, you could probably say Iowa lost because of its offensive performance is probably that Rutgers game. Iowa State, they just couldn't. I mean, they lost by like 20 on the glass, and I know it's part of defense.
Yeah.
But
that's really the only game they weren't competitive.
Hawkeye Skip, do we as a team or players ever improve as seasons go on under Fran? We're not talking about from one season to the next. We're talking about mid-season. I don't know. That's a really tough question to answer, Gary. How do you really gauge that?
Yeah, I haven't watched enough to say that. Obviously, his team last year was really, really good and in a very, very good league. The ending was disappointing, but you get in the NCAA tournament, and that stuff happens all the time. We had a team at Wisconsin one year. We were ranked top 5 in the country, and we played a team in the second round and got knocked out that just couldn't miss a shot. And we were a pretty good defensive team. So when you get in the NCAA, it's a crapshoot. But I think this team has improved, and hopefully they'll continue to improve as we're just getting to the halfway mark of the Big Ten season. So, and I think they will.
Doug says, are we playing on the first day of the Big Ten tournament as of right now? The answer to that question is no, but we're one game out from doing that. So we are ahead of Maryland, who's 3-7. They would be those bottom 4 would have to play on Wednesday, of course, in the Big Ten tournament. Iowa right now tied with Penn State at, I guess it'd be 9th place in the conference. Again, a lot of ball to be played. And I do want to address one more thing from this comment from Robert. He says, awful free throw shooting. I will say this, Robert, it feels like that at times. They shot 75% from the free throw line, 21 to 28. That's pretty darn good, isn't it, Gary?
Yeah, that's I mean, I think they're the number 1 free throw shooting team in the league.
And Rebraca, you're talking about Rebraca. He made 2 in a row in a big moment in this game.
Yeah, he made 2 big free throws. I think the rebounding was a problem at times.
Yes, it was. Lost by 10.
They got to the free throw line 28 times, so that's good. I think it was more giving up 90 points than and rebounding had something to do with that.
And the way they gave up the 90 points, layups and open threes.
We've talked about it over and over again. A lot of shots around the rim that they got to try to shore up a little bit.
The real Hayden says, Corey, it's not negativity. It's the reality of the situation. Don't pee on us and tell us it's raining. If some fans can't handle the truth, they can go. You said it, not me. Let me see. I think Martin wants, I think we already answered this question about JT. Jermaine makes an interesting point. I heard on commentary that Iowa is 302nd in the nation or something like that by playing guys with 2 fouls. I don't know if that means percentage of time possible with guys with 2 fouls. I guess that's what he means. By half.
Yeah. That's an obvious rule. Bo Ryan had the same rule. I mean, if you got 2, you're sitting in the first half, and no questions asked. And so they knew that. I mean, we talked about that's one of the advantages of it. Hey, if you're going to be stupid and get dumb fouls, you're going to be sitting right next to me keeping stats. So you can't do that. And I'll be honest, the way he's picking up fouls, I can see why he does it with him. I don't. He picks up too many bad fouls that he's got to shore that up, and he knows it. He knows that, and hopefully he'll get better at it. It's not like he doesn't know that. He just in the heat of the moment, sometimes you don't make the play.
Have you ever heard of this proper? And it is a proper pronoun now. It's been adopted as a proper pronoun in the Iowan dictionary, the Fran fade. Have you heard of this before, Gary? This is an Iowan term that there's a narrative. There's a narrative around Iowa basketball that Iowa's teams tend to fade once you hit February and March. But let's be honest, this team they haven't beaten. I mean, they have 2 quad 1 wins. They are quad 1 wins as of right now, but they haven't really beaten anybody very good, Gary, right? I mean, let's be honest. They really haven't. Utah State was a good win. Virginia, I'd say that's a good win. I know they're not very good this year, but it's on the road. And certainly the Indiana game was a good win. But they have not beaten anybody that good. But I don't think you can say they're fading because you have to start someplace to go down. I mean, they haven't proven themselves yet.
Yeah. no, and there's some games left to be played. You know, it is what it is. They've had some chances that they haven't gotten it done yet. But like we've said, they've been very, very competitive, with the exception of maybe one game. And this league is tough. I mean, this league's got more pro players than it's had in a while. And when you have pro players that can make pro plays, you know, you can lose close, tight games, and so there's, you know, we're just past the halfway mark. Got 9 games left, so there's some opportunities there to still make a run, and hopefully that's going to be the case.
And Ken says when they made the tip-in basket from Bohannon attempted 3, why did they not foul instead of letting them shoot the 3 to tie? You're thinking of the other overtime, Ken. That was regulation with 0.2 seconds when they tipped it in. But you're right. We addressed that earlier. Gary said there was just probably too much time for Fran to want to roll the dice on that. We've seen Fran foul up 3 this year, which is not a Fran thing to do, but he did do it. And I remember us talking about it on a show. I think they should have.
If you foul with 12 seconds left, they're going to go make them both. And now they're down 1 with 12 seconds left, and they're pressing you. And, you know, you can turn the ball over, or if you get it in, they'll just foul you again. And then you go down there and you got to make free. Now you got to make the free throws. And now if you miss, they've got time to come down and score. Where you want to do that is with, like, you know, less than 5 seconds would be ideal, so that now they got to think about whether they're going to make it and then miss the second one on purpose, to where you got to rebound. And the other thing with them is with their rebounding, that's another thing you got to throw in there. It doesn't necessarily mean they're going to get the rebound if they miss the free throw, if they foul. So it's one that's debated a lot. It's a lot easier said than done, because you're always afraid you're going to go in there and foul, and the guy's in the act of shooting. Now he's got 3 free throws. You know, you're almost saying, look, let's just get a stop. Just you know, no threes. Let's just get a stop, and let's be good enough that we can get a stop without fouling. And unfortunately, they did not do it in that situation. But I don't know if I would have fouled either. I think there's too much time on the clock.
And Chase makes a good point that Iowa rarely has a guard that can break a defense down and create a shot on his own. We thought maybe Ulis or Toussaint would be that. They just don't have the offensive game. Maybe DeSante Bowen comes in next year and does that. But that is a good point. And Avery brings up, does Iowa hit the portal for big men next year? Rebraca's coming back for another year, barring something tragic. I mean, something just crazy. If he wants to go play pro back in Serbia or something, but he's coming back next year. But do you think they go to the portal? They have Owen Freeman, a freshman, coming in, but do you bank on development from? I mean, you've got to be 3 guys.
I would think they would take a look. You know, if it fits their, you know, what they're looking for. You know, it's a totally new thing, and you got to kind of feel your way through it. And you got to be careful. You know, you bring somebody in that's, you know, not what you want in terms of your culture, it can be a disaster. I mean, it can be you got somebody who comes in selfish and wants to do their thing for 1 year. It can be a real problem. So you got to be careful. You got to do your research, and you got to find the right people to do it. It's why a lot of schools didn't even do transfers prior to this whole portal thing. They didn't even take transfers because they don't want to mess with their chemistry. And but now, with as much movement as you're getting, you know, the odds are that, you know, there's probably more quote unquote quality kids out there that are looking for a new experience that I'm sure they'll take a look. But I think they'll also be careful that they want good kids in the program that they enjoy coaching, that believe in the kind of things they believe in, or they can do a lot more harm than good. Because in a lot of cases, a 1-year deal, and, you know, 1-year deals, you got to make sure that the kid is, you know, got the right frame of mind as to what we're trying to do. And that's something you got to research. Be careful about.
Fran has done a nice job in the portal when he's been very selective, kind of like Kirk has been, although I wish Kirk would, again, utilize it more. Fran doesn't utilize it this year. I might say the same thing, but Bakari Evelyn was a really good piece to that team 2 years ago. And Rebraca is a good piece for this team. If they didn't have Rebraca,
sure,
what would we be doing out here
Yeah.
every night,
Yeah.
Gary?
Yeah. And you got to understand that, the Nunji thing happens, and now all of a sudden
Yeah.
you got to get moving. If they figured Nunji was probably coming back, and the last thing you want to do is bring somebody in that's going to make him upset if he's staying. Again, you don't want to break up the chemistry. You got to be really careful as the pieces that you put in there. To give you an example, Wisconsin took that big kid from Cincinnati, I think, and that kid, he knows he's going to play 6, 7, 8 minutes, and that's it. And maybe in some cases he may play a little more. He's not going to get a ton of shots. He's in there to rebound and defend. Hey, that's a good pickup. Now, if that kid wanted to come in and play 15, 20 minutes and get 10 shots, that's not a good pickup. And so that's where you got to do your research. I would think in the portal that they would have some interest, because if there's a solid inside player out there that wants to play at the Big Ten level, this would be a great place to do it, because there's a need.
And John, I understand you're very passionate about, and I think John's one of our older listeners. I think. Sorry if I'm aging you, John. But you were alive when Tom Davis was let go, and that was probably not the right decision, Gary. I mean, you were part of that staff, and it wasn't the right decision, because sometimes you don't realize grass isn't always greener on the other side.
Well, he was let go for what he's saying right there. We weren't winning enough, and yet we went to the tournament. We went to a tournament 11 out of 13 years, and we went to 3 or 4 Sweet 16s. It's hard to do. It's hard to do, especially in the Big Ten. I know they get more teams in, but you're going up against everybody else that wants to go, and I get it. And the NCAA tournament we had some real good teams that got knocked out early by a team that gets hot, and it's tough. It's not fair, but that's how you're judged, on how far you can advance in NCAA tournaments as a league and as a program. And it's tough to do. And when you do it, you got to appreciate it.
Caleb says maybe recruiting a legit center when you play in the Big Ten would be a good idea. Well, they did just give up. They just lost maybe the best center in Iowa history. So I understand.
If they had Nunji, I would bet you that Nunji would be one of the top 3 or 4 centers in the league right now. He's averaging nearly a double-double at Xavier, and he's a 3-point threat, and he played well for Iowa last year. So that's the crapshoot in recruiting. All of a sudden, hey, that's a guy we had penciled in and we developed. He got better every year. Now he's coming into his prime, and he's gone. So it's tough. I mean, it's a guy like Keegan Murray. He's developed. All of a sudden, he's developed so much that he's going to be probably gone. So it's not easy. And we're not the only program that's trying to find centers and trying to find guys in them. They're all are. I mean, look at these teams and what they brought in from the portal. It's staggering. There's a lot of that going on. So it's very competitive and a real crapshoot. So it's a big change in college basketball and college sports.
And I think this is our final question that I see here in the chat for you, Gary. With Iowa's issues defensively and you being an assistant yourself, is there an assistant whose job is, as a coach, defense and strategy? Why has it been a struggle for so long? It's a good question. I don't know. Do you know if Spira or Sherm or Billy Taylor specialize in defense?
No, I don't. And I don't. We didn't have it at Wisconsin. I think there are probably very few programs that have an offensive coach and a defensive coach. I'm sure there's some, but I doubt it. I think it's more of a team philosophy, and then when you go about teaching it, you're all on the same page. And maybe one coach might take the interior defense in terms of drills, and one might have the perimeter in terms of drills or what have you. But it's usually a group effort, and that's usually the way it goes.
Eric brings up low energy out of the gate. These last couple of games, I can't argue with that, especially on rebounding. I just thought it was ridiculous that, you have a Penn State team that's not an up and down team, and yet Iowa could not crash the glass or refuse to crash the glass in that first half. I didn't get that at all. Lieb says Iowa defense is flat out lazy. I don't know that I'd go that far. That's strong language, but you have a right to that opinion. And Jordan, you're right. Owen Freeman's not until 2023. So next year, DeSante Bowen, Josh Dix, who broke his leg, and they're going to have to go to the portal for someone, whether it's a big man or if it's an outside shooter, because Dix could be a guy coming in a freshman to make threes, but the guy's got a compound fracture in his leg now.
That's terrible. Yeah, it's terrible. Yeah.
So, and for the record, I'm not downplaying the injury. It's terrible for him, but just from a basketball standpoint, I don't think you can bank. If you're a coach, are you banking on him being here producing year one?
Well, I think you're hoping, but you got to be realistic. You have to see how things develop, and he's young, so he's gonna heal a little quicker than somebody who's 35 and it happened to him. But yeah, that's a blow. You feel for the kid for the most part. Biggest part is him, but it sounds like in what I've read that he understands what he's facing, and he's ready to get after it. So hopefully it'll work out.
Kurt says, if memory serves me right, they got rid of Tom Davis because they wanted the big name, Steve Alford.
There's some truth to that. Yeah, there's. I think the big thing is they just felt that the program was stagnant and needed to get to another level. That's the decision they made, and that's the nature of this game. You know that, hey, you could be sent packing in a moment's notice. There's unbelievable examples of coaches that have been let go that you kind of shake your head at. That anytime there's a change in leadership, you better be careful, because there might be changes below that, depending on what they're trying to do. So it's part of the deal.
Yeah, and for the record, I don't, John, I'm not trying to take a shot at you. You have every right to feel that Fran needs to be let go. I just don't agree with that. And if I felt, I wouldn't say that. And if I did, I wouldn't say that I don't agree with it if I did. So he's done too much. And again, development and identifying talent. He did identify Keegan and Chris Murray. I mean, Auburn was in on them. My understanding.
One Division I offer coming out of high school, and no, they did a great job with that. And
Garza, for that matter.
Garza, they're great credit for that. And Frederick and Wieskamp, they kept him in state. They've done some really good. They've had some real good basketball, and I think he's done a terrific job this year. To lose what they lost in this league, that's just the bottom line. I mean, you lose what they lost and what they expected to have back. I mean, I'm sure they thought they were going to lose Garza and they were going to lose Wieskamp at some time, but I know they expected to have Frederick and Nunji back. You put Frederick and Nunji on this team, it's totally different. And now all of a sudden they're gone, and you're scrambling, and it's a young team in a lot of respects. There's nobody proven on this team. And that even has to go with Keegan coming into the year, and he deserves credit for proving. I mean, for coming up. So, and Chris is on the same path. So I think he's done a great job. And then this is a frustrating loss. There's nobody more frustrated than the coaching staff and the players. I mean, it was right there, and it slipped through their hands. But as I've said a number of times, I like the way this team responds to adversity, and I mean, they could play terrific on Thursday and get beat, because that's how good that team is on the road. But I think this has been a really good year, and hopefully it'll continue, because they got a chance to make it a really nice year. But they got to get some more wins in a tough league.
It's not the players' fault that the schedule early was garbage as far as quality. So they also haven't had as many opportunities for quality wins. They've had opportunities, but just not as many as the field. I mean,
well, I think the schedule would have been different if Nunji and Frederick had been there. I don't think there's any doubt that they would have scheduled differently.
So the schedule was not already in place?
Well, I think some of it was, but I think in some cases it may not have been. There could have been, somebody might have called, say, hey, you want to do a home and home.
Sure.
Alabama calls, say you want. I don't know what I want to do at home run this year.
Exactly the year before.
Yeah, I mean, you just that's just kind of the way it is. I'm sure some of the games were scheduled, but it's a fine line between scheduling too much and not getting any confidence, and then scheduling not enough and not getting enough challenge. And I think for the most part, they did an okay job with that. And it's not like they've been blown out of the water in the Big Ten. I don't fault that. I think if they'd have won tonight, we'd be feeling a lot different. If that 3-point shot had not gone in, and I know it's a big if, we would be thinking a lot different about our situation. But it's not. So we gotta wait for Thursday and see if we can't pull an upset.
And we'll put a bow on this game with this question. Wasn't able to watch the game tonight. What was the story of the game, Grant? See the overtime score, and it was defense, and I thought lack of toughness, especially showing up with loose balls and on the glass. You got to be more physical. And I hear apologists who will say, well, they got out rebounded to Illinois because they didn't have the size. Or they got out rebounded to Purdue because they didn't have the size. Penn State's not a big team, Gary. It's not.
No, they're not. They're physical. They play hard, but no, I think there were some loose ball situations, long rebounds, things like that they got beat to and I'm sure that'll be going over, that you need to get on the road to, pull out a game like that. Hey, get one stop right there at the end, game's over. With all the other stuff that went on, and to give up that 3 when that's all you could give up to get tied is unacceptable. It's tough. So that's where you got to improve.
But for the record, I am behind Fran. I do believe this team is still going to make the tournament, Gary, if anybody cares what my opinion is, and it's just guessing. I still think this team will make the tournament because we went over the schedule last time. I don't think it's a murderer's row relative to the rest of the Big Ten. I think there are winnable games. This was certainly one of them. Again, They get Nebraska, they get Northwestern. Michigan's not playing great. They're going to get Maryland, who they already beat. They're going to get Minnesota, who they already beat. They get Michigan twice, by the way. I mean, you knock you get 2 upsets in there. I think they're in, and I think they're in. I think they will. I think they'll get to 10-10. They get to 9-11. I still think they're bubble. I agree with you that you probably need a couple wins in the tournament. For anybody wondering or doesn't have the schedule in front of them, we'll be back Thursday, so 7 p.m. Just checking to make sure that's FS1. Let me pop a banner up here for our YouTube listeners. So Iowa, Ohio State, Thursday, 7 p.m. And huge game, Gary. This was a game that heading into this week, you could say, well, they could afford to lose to Ohio State. They can't afford to lose to Penn State. Well, they lost to Penn State, so that makes this game that much more important. You don't want to fall to 4-7.
Yeah, that's for sure. That's going to be. I don't know. Has that team lost a game at home? That's going to take a monumental effort. I mean, they're good, and they're still in the race for the Big Ten championship, and they're coming off a real tough loss to Purdue when they must have made an unbelievable comeback. I turned that game off. They're down 20 and had to go somewhere and end up being a 3-point shot at the buzzer. So they must have made an amazing comeback to get back in that game at Purdue. So that's the quality of team they got. Like we said before, Iowa could play great and not win that game. That's how good Ohio State is.
And by the way, you asked if they have lost at home. So they've beaten Duke at home. They beat Wisconsin at home. And in January, they did. I'm trying to see if they lost in January at home. I don't see a loss at home all year, Gary.
No, that'll be.
It's going to be real.
Tough. That will be tough. Yep. So, but
thanks for peeing in my Cheerios here to end the show, Gary.
Hey, still got to play it. What you want to do is, like anytime you go on the road, you want to be in a position where, hey, you got a shot at the end, and maybe you can get a big bucket, get a big stop, and escape. That's stay in the game, and let's see if we can't get in a position where we can, comes down to a possession or two. Hey, now you got a shot. So
say the environments are going to be different, Gary. If you compare the Bryce Jordan Center to what we're going to see in Ohio State Thursday,
No doubt.
I don't understand. And I say the same thing about Iowa fans at times, but where are the Penn State fans? I mean, there was nobody in the arena.
They've never been there.
I don't know why.
They have never. First off, the arena is way too big and it's ugly. It's not a great facility. It's way too big. They should have built a 8,000 seat arena on that campus and probably would pack it. When they used to be in the old arena, I'm dating myself, but when they first came in the Big Ten, they played in their other arena before they built that thing. And it was a brutal place to play, and it was packed, but it was only about 6,000 people. I think they're going into the Big Ten and thought, okay, we got to build this big, huge 18,000 seat arena. I've been in games where they've put up the curtain up top so you can't see the empty seats. They've never drawn well. It's football school, and he's got his work cut out for him getting fans in the stands. It's really difficult at that place. It's one spot in the Big Ten where attendance has been a problem. There are not many, but that's one of them.
And of course, just to update everybody, final score: Iowa, Ohio State women. Iowa women fall at home, 92-88.
Not a good night.
Looks like defense was a problem there as well. I didn't watch it, but there was no OT there. It looked like it was a problem there, and it's been a problem for Lisa's squads here of late. So defensively is where this team still needs to improve. Both teams need to improve. And just appreciate this comment from the Organic Veil Radio. Enjoy the show. Thank you. Go Hawks. Absolutely. It's again, I think this team's still going to make the tournament, but it starts it starts this coming Thursday against Ohio State. You got to find a way to get a quality win, especially to make up for what I don't think is a terrible loss, but certainly not a good one, Gary, tonight. So we'll bounce back, hopefully. Iowa, Ohio State, Thursday night, 7 p.m. Central Time, Fox Sports 1. Gary, appreciate the time as always. Out for over an hour tonight. It was an active show. I guess we expected that after a double overtime loss.
Yeah. Yep. Well, that's the way it goes. So we'll see you Thursday.
All right, folks, for Coach Gary Close, Corey Bratta from the Hawkeye of the Storm, we will talk to you Thursday.